Now let me demonstrate to you what lossy compression means. I've got a photo here. Let me open it in Photoshop. Here we go. This time around, I'm going to go into the File pull-down menu, and I'm going to save it as another version. In this case, a JPEG version. And JPEG is a method of compression that is lossy. Lossy means that data is thrown away to make the file size smaller. And when you choose a JPEG, there's an option for quality that, as you can see here, there's a slider that you can move and control. The more that you move it to the right, or the better the quality, the closer that it looks to the original. Now I'm going to exaggerate this, and I'm going to drag it all the way to 0. And I hope that you can see this in the final video, but the edges of the plane and the detail of the trees is pretty much replaced by this collection of larger squares. Let me just zoom a little bit so you can see the difference somewhat better. So you can see those big squares. If we drag the quality all the way to the top, those squares are actually replaced by the pixels of the trees. So this is an example of lossy compression, where data, or quality if you want to call it like that, is actually thrown away to make the file size smaller. One neat feature about this window here, and the reason why I got this window in Photoshop, is because down here you can see the file size. If I was to compress the same photo with this very low quality setting, the file size would be about 13 kilobytes. And if I pull that slider to the right, you can see that the file size increases dramatically. So here's again an example of lossy compression. Now, can you imagine if you were taking the text documents that we compress with a lossless codec, in that case zip, and they were compressed with a lossy codec? If that was the case, then the text would be missing letters or words, or it would be all mumbled up, and that would not be identical to the original. Let me go back to my Photoshop document where I'm writing some notes, because I've used the terms lossless and lossy codecs, but I neglected to mention what a codec was. So let me write that down. Codec stands for compression, decompression. Compression, decompression. And then they get the word codec. And codec most of the times is referred to on video. But to tell you the truth, it applies to anything that gets compressed and decompressed. As you saw earlier, we compress a text document using the zip codec. Now, in regards to using lossless codecs and lossy codecs, most of the times we're actually going to be working with lossy codecs. The reason for that is because lossless codecs tend to be really, really large in file size. Even though they do apply some compression, so they're better than uncompressed, they still make fairly large documents. Lossless codecs, when they're used for the purposes of maintaining the quality throughout the production process. For example, when you need to take video from one application to another application to do some compositing, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're editing in Final Cut Pro, and then you're taking your video into After Effects to do some work on it, and then later you're going to be taking it into color. In those situations, you may want to work with lossless codecs. For the purposes of deploying video or even editing in the nonlinear editing system, most of the times lossy codecs are better because you can work with them much faster. The computer does not require as much resources. And after all, they take much less hard drive space. So again, most of the times we'll be using lossy. And this is one of the points that compression tends to be a very obscure science. And it's choosing which kind of lossy codec to select when compressing for specific purposes. As we're going to see throughout the course, we're going to see codecs that are great for the purposes of editing and other ones that are better for the purposes of deploying. I'm not going to get into the detail of those two right now because otherwise it gets too confusing. Rather, we'll explain them as we go throughout the course.